Genesis chapter 5. So it starts out with the descendants of Adam, this is the book, in verse 1 says, this is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day when God created man, he made him in the likeness of God. He created them male and female, and he blessed them and named them he named them man in the day when they were created. Now, this is the only species of living things on the earth that man did not name, and that was man. God named us. When Adam had lived 130 years, he became the father of a son in his own likeness, according to his image. Now remember, Abel was gone. Cain was banished from the family, or alienated from the family. When Adam had lived 130 years, he became the father of a son in his own likeness, according to his image, and named him Seth. Then the days of Adam after he became the father of Seth were 800 years, and he had other sons and daughters. So all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. Seth lived 105 years and became the father of Enosh. Then Seth lived 807 years after he became the father of Enosh. And he had other sons and daughters. So all the days of Seth were 912 years, and he died. Enosh lived 90 years and became the father of Canaan. Then Enosh lived 850 years after he became the father of Canaan, and he had other sons and daughters. So all the days of Enosh were 905 years, and he died. Canaan lived 70 years and became the father of Mahalalel. Then Canaan lived 840 years after he became the father of Mahalalel, and he had other sons and daughters. So all the days of Canaan were 910 years, and he died. Mahalalel lived 65 years and became the father of Jared. Then Mahalalel lived 830 years after he became the father of Jared, and he had other sons and daughters. So all the days of Mahalalel were 895 years, and he died. Jared lived 162 years and became the father of Enoch. Then Jared lived 800 years after he became the father of Enoch, and he had other sons and daughters. So all the days of Jared were 962 years, and he died. Enoch lived 65 years and became the father of Methuselah. Then Enoch walked with God 300 years after he became the father of Methuselah, and he had other sons and daughters. So all the days of Enoch were 365 years. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Methuselah lived 187 years and became the father of Lamech. Then Methuselah lived 782 years after he became the father of Lamech, and he had other sons and daughters. So all the days of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died. Lamech lived 182 years and became the father of a son. Now he called his name Noah, saying, "This one will give us rest from our work and from the toil of our hands arising from the ground which the Lord has cursed." Then Lamech lived 595 years after he became the father of Noah, and he had other sons and daughters. So all the days of Lamech were 777 years, and he died. Noah was 500 years old, and Noah became the father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now, here we are. That was the chapter 5 of Genesis, and it gives us the generations of Adam from Adam up to Noah. Here's something to consider about this. There's a number of things to look at. Why do we see these lengthy lives, these long lives? The atmosphere was different. Remember, it was an atmosphere in which rain was not necessary. The floodgates had not been unleashed. They still had the firmament above, which was mostly water. But it was a completely different environment before the flood. What you'll see after the flood is that the lifespans become more and more aligned with ours today. So let's look at this. The first thing we see is that Adam had, and notice what each one does. There's two things you're going to notice by each of these patriarchs, with the exception of one. They will all have two things, one in common to all, two in common to all but one. The first thing that they all have in common is that while one child is mentioned, it tells us that, and they had other sons and daughters. You probably are wondering what happened to them, and why weren't they mentioned? Well, they were mentioned. It was acknowledged that they had other sons and daughters. Here's the second thing that, well, all of them have in common except one, and that is that they all died. All these years, 800, 900, 969 years, all these years of life, these huge lifespans, they all died. This was the curse in action. And notice that the years did not necessarily decline until after the flood, when the atmosphere was completely different. So we had Adam live a total of 930 years. Seth lived a total of 912 years. Enosh lived a total of 905 years. 910 years was a lifespan of Kenan. Mahalalel lived a total of 895 years. Jared lived a total of 962 years. Enoch, it was the other thing. This is the one that was the exception. He lived a total of 365 years. And then he was not. God took him. One pastor, the late Herb Green, said that Enosh and God had such a relationship that he went for a walk with God, and God said, you know what? Let's continue this. And so Enoch was no more. Methuselah was lived a total of 969 years. And Lamech lived a total of 777 years. But these all died with the exception of Enoch. This was the death that God said would happen to us as a result of the fall, as a result of disobedience. And we have to take God seriously in all these matters. Sin is deadly. We see Seth was a child who replaced Abel. And like I said, each of these shows that they had one child at least. Well, we see one child mentioned who would become part of the seed epic that is played through the whole Bible. See, what the Bible does is it opens up wide with a family, with a patriarch, or with a person, and then it narrows it down and narrows it down and narrows it down. We start out with Adam, all the children of Adam. Then we focus in on Seth. Then it's all the descendants of Seth, but then all his children, and then we focus on Enosh. We then focus on the next chink in the Messianic. And by the way, this is the Messianic seed line. Kenan, then Mahalalel, then Jared, then Enoch, then Methuselah, then Lamech, and then Noah at this point. So we see that there is this paring down to the line. Now here's the interesting thing. Noah Noah was 500 years when his child was born. Noah had 3 sons. Now, they may have been triplets: Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The issue with this is that everybody else has only 1 child identified. Noah has 3. He had 3 godly children. I don't recall, but we'll see when we get there, when it runs back over Noah's genealogy and the book of his generations. We will see if he indeed had other sons and daughters. But the most likely conclusion is that, yes, indeed, he did have more children, but these were the 3 godly ones. And he was blessed because he had 3 godly ones. Here's another thing to look at. Notice it says, this is the book of the generation of Adam. And you're going to see this over and over again, talking about Adam, Noah, Shem, Ham, and Adam, as you see. Noah, then Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and then Shem. Then it's going to, pare down to Shem, because through Shem comes Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, etc., until we get to Jesus. What we see here is this thing of the book of the generations of Adam. People say rather ignorantly, that all these genealogy and all this information in the Bible was handed down verbally. And they try to use the telephone game to describe how things got warped. And simply, nothing could be farther from the truth, and nothing could be more ridiculous and ignorant as far as knowing how God brought the Bible to us. For one thing, were they literate? Well, notice that word book. And this is Moses writing. There was some record, some written record left at some time. And I figured with Adam having a total of 930 years, he probably had time to learn how to read and write and record his generations. If not, Noah did. See, Moses was very likely working from written records, not just oral traditions passed down, but a written record. And why do I say that? Well, archaeologists have unearthed libraries going back to right around the time of Noah. Yeah, you want me to say that again? They have unearthed libraries going back to the time of Noah. Now, the thing that has been said about both this portion of the Bible and any part of the Bible written that came about before Moses couldn't have happened because these people were illiterate. They were not illiterate. See, one thing God did is he put it in writing. And that's a committed thing, because once it's placed in writing, once there is a written record of a thing, it can't go away unless you find a way to destroy all of the copies. But I'll move on. Just know this, that when you're reading the Bible, you're reading God's word. Truthfully, his word. It is his word. It is accurate, it is authoritative, it is true from the cover to the maps, as some preachers like to say it. But it's true from Genesis to Revelation. Genesis to Malachi for the Tanakh, and then Matthew to Revelation for what we call the New Testament. So let's move on. We're going to go and start into chapter 6, because 6 tells us how things were leading up to the flood. Now, it came about, and this is where, after you go through this genealogy here, you go through this list of people, what it then does is it takes us to the next major event on God's redemptive calendar. Now it came about when men began to multiply on the face of the land and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves, whomever they chose. Then the Lord said, my spirit shall not strive with man forever, because he also is flesh. Nevertheless, his days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came in to the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Oh my goodness. The Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. The Lord said, I will blot out man whom I have created from the face of the land, from man to animals, to creeping things, and to birds of the sky, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. So let's go back to chapter 6. Let's go back to verse 1 here. Now it came about when men began to multiply in the face of the land, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves, whomever they chose. Now, there's a lot of discussion about this. What were these sons of men? Well, consistently in the Bible, when you see this phrase, sons of God, in the Tanakh at least, and when it talks about a specific group of people, a class of personalities or persons or whatever, it's talking about angels. So the question is, well, how could angels reproduce with human women? Now, it mentions these people called the Nephilim. The Nephilim. This may have been a different class of spiritual being, or some sort of being. I don't know, but my take on this is that some group of angels, some group of angelic beings were different at that time, or were on the earth at that time, and somehow were able to reproduce through women. It's at least the possession of human men and these men reproducing with them as demon spirit, evil spirit possessed men who took wives through the spirits these spirits took wives through these men, and then impregnated them, and then exposed them to all kinds of darkness. What I tend to think is that one of those two is right. Either A, it was possessed, and it was their whole mindset. They were savage. They were ruthless, because it calls them people of renown. Or that these were angelic beings, not human, who were able somehow to reproduce with women, to impregnate and reproduce with women. Let's look at I think it's Jude chapter, well, Jude only has one chapter. Let's look at Jude, starting at verse, doggone it. Okay, here, verse 8. In fact, I'll just read from verse 5. Now I desire to remind you, though you know all things, and this is Jude, starting at verse 5. Now I desire to remind you, though you know all things once for all, that the Lord, after saving a people out of the land of Egypt, subsequently destroyed those who did not believe. So we're going to stop here now, and we're going to pick up the next time and continue on with our discussion of Genesis chapter 6. And maybe even touch into a little bit of chapter 7 as well, but we'll definitely get through Genesis chapter 6. Thank you for listening. The Lord bless you. The Lord keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you. The Lord lift upon you his countenance, that is his favor, and give you his shalom peace. God bless you and thank you for listening.